everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be talking to you about 3 updates you'll want to know for the 2026 Hobonichi planners, set to be released on August 31st at 10 p.m. So I'm gonna get right into it. The first update that you want to know is that this year Hobonichi has announced that the planners will be sold in book and cover sets. So you may have seen the announcement. This isn't new if you've been in the Hobonichi know or community for a few years now. You might remember that we did have book and cover sets back in 2022 for the 2023 planners. So it's only been the last year or 2 years that Hobonichi covers and books have been separated into like planner only and cover only separate things that you can purchase. But this year, Hobonichi has announced that they'll be selling them as book and cover sets. So we at Yoseka still don't really know what we're going to do about this change. So we're still thinking about it. If you have any other thoughts, make sure to let us know in the comments. The second update you'll want to know for the 2026 Hobonichi planners is about the paper change. So if you were into Hobonichi last year, you may have heard that there was a lot of variation in the paper that Hobonichi put into their planner books. Tomoe River Paper S, as Hobonichi calls it, has some variation anyways because it's made from a natural plant fiber. So between different batches and things, there is a standard amount of variation that Hobonichi is like, this is acceptable. But they did want to recognize that there were people who had issues with feathering, bleed through, some issues like last year we tested out the paper, and some of these issues here are something that Hobonichi wanted to try their best and settle or make a little more consistent in the paper for this year. So the paper has not changed. It's still the same Tomoe River S paper that we love, but there are some adjustments that have been made to the paper to hopefully help make this bleed through, feathering, inconsistency a little more consistent across the board, and hopefully not change anything at all for anyone experientially for the planner. And I will be testing the paper because they sent us a little 2026 weeks tester book, the sample. I'm going to be doing this same little test in this book because everyone seems to like the variety of tests that I do here. Alrighty, I will test the paper now. Okay, I'm back, and this part is still drying a little bit, but we're still gonna take a look at it. I think something overall that I've noticed while writing on the paper is that the dry time does seem to be a little bit longer, but I think it's a good sign that I'm not really seeing at a first glance any feathering across the board, which is very exciting because if we look at last year's sample, there is a little bit more feathering that we see with the wet ink and the scented ink. The scented ink is known to feather on many papers, so this didn't really surprise me last year, but what does surprise me this year is looking at the feathering ink, this scented ink that we know feathers quite a bit on most papers, not really feather at all. I'm gonna take a even closer look. Like barely any feathering that I see at all. With the wet ink, it's the same. Same with the shading and the sheening ink. There's a lot of sheening getting shown off here. There's still a lot of shading getting shown off as well. I do think I see a little less green here in this swatch than in this swatch, but it's not such a noticeable difference to me that I would probably notice like while I'm writing or journaling, because it seems like there's still shading that's getting shown off in these other inks. So I think the paper in terms of ink quality, fountain pen ink quality, looks like it's performing very well. So that's exciting. And now let's look on the back for any bleed through or ghosting. Ghosting is to be expected. That's because the paper is so thin. If you write with a dark color, you're going to see the like almost after image of that writing on the other side of the paper. But as far as bleed through, this is looking very good. I see a little hint of bleed through where I put a lot of ink down for this swatch for the sheening ink, this Shadow Snow. Like you can see a little tiny bit of bleed through there, but for these other swatches, I really don't see it at all. And it's very, very minimal for this ink that we know feathers on a lot of paper. If we compare it to last year's 2025 paper, this is the difference that we see here. So there was significant bleed through on the sheening ink, a tiny bit of bleed through from the shading ink, a lot of bleed through from the scented ink, and a little bit from the Irishizuku wet ink as well. So if you want to watch the video where I did all of this testing and did more of an in-depth review of last year's paper, we'll put the video up here somewhere. I tested 7 planner papers, so you don't have to. So I'll go through that more thoroughly in that video. But for this video, it seems like this is a significant improvement in our test right here. The smudging is still, this is a very unofficial test because I don't really count the dry time, but it looks to be pretty similar to last year, maybe a little bit more smudging, which I think supports my theory of the higher dry time, which supports more of the like ink qualities on the paper, but that's just my theory. So it looks like everything here looks very good. Writing with the broad nib was very good in my experience. Like it was very smooth. I didn't feel like anything was bleeding. It felt like the ink looked like how it was supposed to look. So that's exciting for me. Something that I do want to say is Evelyn actually tested out coloring over the same spot of the paper a little bit in her video on TikTok. So if you want to go check that out, make sure you go to our TikTok. But I'm going to color in just a little bit of this paw here just to see. Ooh, it looks like it's really not dry yet though, so I'll try to avoid coloring over it too much. Actually, I should use some blotter paper on this first. Yeah, because there's still quite a bit that's like not quite dry. Ooh, it's still smudging so much. I'm glad I tested that stamp because I wasn't going to test that before. I wonder what happens to last year's. Yeah, there's like no smudging there. So I think that is one difference you'll have to know if you're a big stamp person. There was no bleed through from the stamp, which I think is really impressive. There's a little bit of ghosting, but pretty much not really any bleed through. But the smudging, because I think the dry time of the stamps are longer and the inks are a little bit longer. Yeah, quite a bit of smudging there. But actually, the bleed through on last year's paper is way more significant than this year's paper. I don't really see anything on this paper in terms of bleed through when you color over the same spot multiple times. So I think that's very promising. But I think this brings up a good point. Since Evelyn did test this paper and had different results, it is still possible, since this paper is made from a natural plant fiber, that there is still some variation. So I didn't experience any bleed through here. The paper performed very well for me, and it might perform just as well for you with like a very, very slight variation. So I think it's really good if you can make it out to the preview party or make it out to Yoseka, test the 2026 paper with pens that you like or you use specifically, and see if the paper performs the way you want it to in person, because I obviously can't test everything. I try and test things that most people use, but obviously I can't get to everything. So try and test it with your own pens by yourself in person. But as far as what I'm seeing here, I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm seeing. The third update that you'll want to know for the Hobonichi 2026 planners is about the preview party. So at Yoseka, we've held the preview party by Hobonichi for the past few years actually, and usually this is a ticketed, like lottery, invite only type of event. You apply, and if you get in, you're able to preview the collection of Hobonichi's special artist collaborations and like very beautiful designed covers ahead of the release date for when everyone gets to see all these designs. But this year, the preview party at Yoseka is being held after that release date. So everyone will know what the planners look like, but this event will be open to the public, so anyone can come by and look at the covers, feel them, test out the paper for themselves. We'll have a bunch of testers set up and, kind of get a feel for what they might want, what they like, what they might not like before the actual release day on August 31st. And then after September 1st, we're going to have the planners on sale in that same preview party space, in our new space called Yoseka Land, there for everyone to purchase if they find something that they like. So that's a big change to the preview party this year, and I think it's really great that everyone can come and take a look and see what they like. Even though everyone will already be able to see all the styles online on our website, you can browse and then come into the preview party whenever you have time just to take a look and make sure the texture and the color in person is actually something that you like. So we hope to see you there at the preview party at Yoseka. All right, everyone, that is it for this video. I hope these 3 updates give you something to look forward to for the 2026 Hobonichi season. And if you have any questions or have any thoughts about the changes this year, please feel free to leave them in a comment below. Like, subscribe, do all the things. But I'll try to answer all your questions if I can. And the dates to look out for this upcoming 2026 Hobonichi season is August 22nd. All of the styles will be released online, so you'll be able to browse through, find your favorites and whatnot. And then on August 31st at 10 p.m., all of the Hobonichi collection will go live and it will be available for purchase. There are no pre-orders available with Hobonichi, so it's just a click and get it type of situation. If you've been in the Hobonichi realm for a few years, you know the drill. So we look forward to seeing you on Hobonichi Day or maybe at a preview party and maybe in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.